Father said I would never succeed without his money, so I built an empire just to prove him wrong. I'm sitting at the head of a glossy boardroom table with a pen that costs more than my first week's groceries, and my hand is still shaking like I'm 14 again. The lawyer across from me has the documents fanned out in perfect stacks, little color tabs like flags marking where I'm supposed to sign. My CFO is beside me, whispering numbers under her breath, eyes darting between the clock and the door. Outside the glass wall, I can see my executive assistant hovering near reception, her posture stiff in that way people get when something is about to go sideways. Then the door opens without a knock, hard enough to bump the wall stopper, and my father walks in like he owns the room. He doesn't look at anyone else. He looks straight at me, jaw clenched, and the first thing he does is laugh. One sharp, disbelieving sound, like the whole scene is a prank designed to humiliate him. "So this is what you've been doing," he says, voice loud in the quiet. His eyes flick over my suit, the laptop, the nameplate, the framed value statement on the wall, and I can see him trying to fit it into the story he's told himself for years. He steps closer, palms flat on the table, leaning into my space like I'm still a kid he can crowd. "You can't do this," he says, and his breath smells faintly of mint and anger. "You don't get to sit there and sign my life away like you're some kind of—" He stops himself, but the insult is still there, hanging between us. My lawyer clears his throat. My CFO goes very still. My father doesn't care. He just stares at me with that old, familiar mixture of contempt and expectation, waiting for me to shrink. It was a Tuesday night when he said the line that welded itself into my brain. I remember because it was the night before my final exams, and I'd been at the kitchen table with my laptop opened, trying to finish a scholarship application between studying and washing dishes. My father came home late from his office, still in his work shirt, tie loosened, smelling like aftershave and stale coffee. He glanced at my laptop, saw the university website, and made this face like he'd stepped in something. "What's that?" he asked, already irritated. I said, "Scholarship application." He laughed, the same laugh he just gave me in this boardroom. "For what?" he asked. "For uni. For fees," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. My father pulled out a chair and sat across from me like he was about to negotiate a contract. "Why are you wasting time?" he said. "If you want to study, you study what I tell you, and I'll pay. If you want to do your little whatever this is, then don't come crying to me when it falls apart." I swallowed and said, "I'm not asking you to pay." That's when he leaned forward and said it, slow, like he wanted it to hurt. "You'll never succeed without my money. You're not built for it. You're not smart enough to make it on your own." I didn't even argue. I just stared at him, because what do you say to someone who's decided you're a disappointment before you've even failed? My mother was washing dishes behind us, the water running too loud, and she didn't turn around. She stayed facing the sink like if she didn't witness it, she didn't have to intervene. My father stood up, patted my laptop like it was a pet, and said, "You can prove me wrong. Go on, but don't come back begging. Pride doesn't pay rent." Then he went upstairs, leaving the smell of his aftershave hanging over my scholarship forms. That line followed me everywhere after that. It followed me to my first crappy share house with mold in the bathroom and a landlord who forgot to fix things. It followed me to my first job interview, where the manager glanced at my resume and asked, "So you have no experience?" It followed me when I got rejected from a scholarship and sat on the curb outside the uni admin building, trying not to cry in public. It followed me when I ate instant noodles so often I started adding frozen peas like it was gourmet. And it followed me in quieter ways, too. Like the way I'd flinch when anyone offered help, because help always came with a hand on your throat in my family. My father wasn't poor. That was the funniest part of his speech. He wasn't the guy who clawed his way up from nothing and wanted to teach me grit. He was comfortable. He owned a few retail stores, small but profitable, and he loved the way people treated him when he pulled out his wallet. He loved paying for dinners and then telling stories about how kids today don't understand hard work. He loved saying things like, "I built everything from scratch," even though his own father had given him a tidy loan to start. But he never talked about that part. He only talked about himself as a hero. And he had favorites, even if he'd deny it. My older brother could do no wrong. My brother went to a private school, got a car for his 18th, had his uni fees covered without even asking. My father called him champ. My mother bragged about him at church. When my brother messed up, it was boys will be boys. When I messed up, it was you're like this on purpose. I was the kid who asked too many questions. The kid who didn't laugh at my father's jokes when they were cruel. The kid who didn't want to work in his stores forever. I wanted to study business and media, to learn marketing and systems, to build something. My father heard that and translated it as disobedience. In his world, independence wasn't a trait. It was a threat. So when he said, "You'll never succeed without my money," what he meant was, "You'll never succeed without me." The first year after that kitchen table conversation was pure survival. I enrolled in a degree part-time and worked 3 jobs. Mornings at a cafe, afternoons tutoring high school kids, weekends doing inventory shifts at a warehouse. My days were measured in train timetables and caffeine and the ache in my feet. I kept a spreadsheet of every dollar. I learned the difference between having money and having cash flow. I learned how one unexpected bill could knock you sideways for weeks. I learned how to smile at customers when your stomach is empty because you're saving grocery money for textbooks. I also learned something else. I was good at noticing inefficiencies. At the cafe, the owner would complain about waste, how they always ran out of croissants on Saturdays and always threw away muffins on Tuesdays. I started tracking it in a notebook just for myself, and then one day, I showed him a simple chart and suggested a change in ordering. He stared at me like I'd done magic. "How'd you figure that out?" he asked. I shrugged and said I wrote it down. It was the first time someone treated my brain like it was useful instead of inconvenient. It lit something up in me. My first business wasn't glamorous. It was barely a business at all. I noticed students in my building constantly needing last-minute printing, binding, basic stationery, stuff the campus store charged ridiculous prices for. I bought a secondhand printer, a stack of paper, and started offering cheap printing and binding services from my tiny bedroom. It sounds stupid now, but at the time it felt like rebellion. I put up simple flyers. I made an Instagram page. I charged just enough to cover supplies and make a small margin. I stayed up late stapling essays, listening to my roommates laugh in the living room while I calculated costs. Within a month, I was busy enough that I had to set pickup hours. I made $300 that first month. $300, but it was mine. It wasn't wages. It wasn't my father's money. It was proof that I could create value out of nothing but attention and effort. I called my mother once, excited, and told her what I was doing. There was a pause on the line. Then she said quietly, "Just be careful." She didn't say she was proud. She didn't say she believed in me. She said be careful, like ambition was something you could injure yourself on. When my father found out, because nothing stays secret in families like mine, he called me and laughed. "So you're running a little photocopy shop," he said. "That's your empire?" His voice was amused, like he was humoring a child playing pretend. "You know you can come work for me and make real money," he added. "But you don't want real money. You want to prove some point." He was right about one thing. I did want to prove a point, but not in the way he meant. I didn't want to prove I was better than him. I wanted to prove I wasn't what he said I was. The turning point came 2 years later after my printing hustle had turned into a small service network. I'd hired 2 other students to help. We expanded into event printing, menus, posters, last-minute signage for local community groups. We partnered with a cheap courier guy to deliver things around campus and nearby suburbs. I learned how to negotiate prices, how to handle complaints, how to apologize without groveling. I learned that if you make it easy for people, they will pay you and thank you for it. Then I made my first real mistake. I took on a big order for a student conference, hundreds of lanyards and programs and banners, with a tight deadline. I paid up front for materials. The client promised to pay on delivery. They delayed. They kept delaying. When the day came, they said they'd sort payment after. I should have held the order. I didn't. I delivered it anyway because I didn't want to be difficult, because I've been trained to smooth things over. They never paid. That one job wiped out months of profit. I sat on my bed in my tiny rental room, staring at my bank account and feeling like my stomach had been scooped out. My phone buzzed with messages from the people I'd hired. "When's payday?" Hey, just checking. I paid them anyway by borrowing money from a friend and selling my laptop, then used the uni computer lab for assignments like it was 2005. I walked around for weeks with a smile pasted on my face and panic under my skin. When I told my father, because I was stupid enough to hope he'd say something kind, he didn't even hesitate. I told you, he said. You're not built for this. You don't have the instincts. Business is for people who can handle it. Come home. Stop embarrassing yourself. I hung up and cried so hard I got a nosebleed. Then I cleaned myself up, went back to my spreadsheet, and wrote in a big red cell, "Never deliver without payment." It sounds small, but that was the moment I stopped hoping my father would approve. Hope is expensive. I couldn't afford it. I finished my degree. I didn't walk at graduation because I was working that day. I started taking marketing contracts for small businesses, cafes, trad-eyes, local retailers. Because I learned how to sell things online and I was good at it. I built websites. I ran social media ads. I tracked results. I charged less than agencies, but more than hobbyists. My clients were grateful because I explained things in plain language and didn't make them feel stupid. The money was still tight, but it was steady. Then one of my clients, a family-owned corner store, mentioned they were struggling to keep up with deliveries from suppliers. The big guys get priority, the owner complained. We're always last. I asked some questions. I drew a little flowchart on a napkin. I realized the issue wasn't demand. It was logistics. So I did something that in hindsight was either brave or reckless. I started a small distribution and delivery service for independent stores in my area. Nothing fancy. A van, a driver, a simple ordering portal. The pitch was straightforward. Group your orders, consolidate deliveries, reduce wasted trips, get better rates by negotiating as a cluster. The first year was chaos. Suppliers didn't take me seriously. Drivers quit. A tire blew on the M4 at 6 a.m., and I sat on the side of the road, watching trucks roar past, while my phone exploded with missed deliveries. I learned how to talk to insurance companies. I learned how to read contracts without falling asleep. I learned how to fire people without apologizing for existing. I also learned how to lead. Real leadership, not the I'm the boss performance my father loved. When my driver's kid got sick, I covered his shift myself. When a store owner's fridge broke, I helped him move stock because if he lost money, my network lost money. People started trusting me because I wasn't just selling them a service. I was building something that included them. By year 3, we had 5 vans. By year 5, we had a warehouse. By year 7, we had a full supply chain platform that let independent retailers compete with bigger chains on price and efficiency. I didn't plan for it to become big. I just kept solving the next problem, then the next. My father heard about it through family, of course. He started calling it your little delivery thing. He'd say it at gatherings with his smirk, like I was still printing essays in my bedroom. Then, as it grew, the smirk turned into something else, suspicion. He asked how I got investors. He asked who I knew. He asked if I was in debt. He asked if I was doing anything illegal. In his mind, success without him could only be explained by cheating. I tried once to include him. I invited him to tour our warehouse when we moved into a bigger site. He walked around with his hands behind his back, inspecting shelves like he was judging a supermarket aisle. He nodded at the forklifts like they were toys. Then he said, "Not bad. But you know, if you'd listened to me, you could have done this faster." Like my whole life was a detour from his wisdom. I didn't answer. My CFO later whispered, "Is he always like that?" And I laughed too hard, because what else can you do when someone sees your pain and names it casually? The empire part happened gradually, then suddenly. We expanded to multiple cities. We partnered with tech developers. We bought a small competitor. We started offering financing to stores to help them renovate, modernize, stay afloat. We created a membership program that gave independents collective bargaining power. We hired hundreds of people. I stood in front of new hires at orientation and told them, truthfully, we exist because someone decided small businesses deserved a fair shot. And then COVID hit, and everything went sideways for everyone, and somehow, our network became essential. While big chains struggled with stock gaps, our independents, connected through our platform, shared inventory, and move supplies faster. It was messy and exhausting and terrifying. I slept on a fold-out bed in the office. I had panic attacks in the bathroom, and then went back out and made decisions anyway. We kept people employed. We expanded again because demand forced it. We did interviews. We got featured on business programs. My face ended up on TV more than once, which still feels surreal because I spent my early 20s trying to be invisible. That's when my father started paying attention in a new way. Not with pride, with hunger. He called me one night after my segment aired on a national show. "You're on TV," he said, like he'd just discovered it. "You didn't tell me." I said, "We're not close," and the bluntness surprised even me. There was a silence. Then he cleared his throat and said, "Well, good on you." It sounded like a man reading a line he didn't understand. Then, 2 weeks later, he called again. Different tone. "I need to talk business," he said. No greeting. No small talk. I was in my office, staring at a dashboard of delivery stats, when his voice slid into my ear like an old pressure. "Okay," I said carefully. "What's up?" "My stores are struggling," he said. "Rent's up. Suppliers are screwing me. Customers are going to the big guys. I need a short-term injection, not charity. A loan. I'll pay you back." I sat back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. The universe has a dark sense of humor. "You want my money," I said slowly. "It's not your money," he snapped automatically, then caught himself. "I mean, yes, it is. Whatever. Don't get emotional. It's business. Don't get emotional." That was his favorite command whenever feelings threatened his control. I said, "Send me your numbers. Let my team look," because I'm not a villain. Because I still had that small, stubborn part of me that wanted to be the bigger person. Because I thought maybe helping him could heal something. His numbers were bad. Not one bad quarter bad. Structural. He'd ignored trends, refused to adapt, kept running his stores like it was 1998. He'd also taken on personal debt to cover business losses, which is a special kind of stubbornness. My CFO and legal counsel reviewed everything and gave me a blunt assessment. Any loan to him would be unsecured, risky, and likely never repaid. It wouldn't be a loan. It would be a rescue. I called him and told him the truth. I offered an alternative. Bring his stores into our network, restructure, reduce supplier costs, modernize. We could help, but it required him to accept oversight and change. It required him to admit he didn't know everything. He exploded. "So you want to control me now?" he shouted. "You want to make me your little project so you can feel superior?" I said quietly, "I want you to survive." He laughed bitter. "You don't care if I survive. You just want to prove your point." There was again. Always the point. Always the story where I'm motivated by spite, because acknowledging my competence would mean acknowledging he was wrong. He hung up on me. 6 months later, his largest store defaulted on rent. Then another. Suppliers put him on cash only. Staff quit. My brother called me and said, "Dad's stressed," like stress was a new concept. My mother, who had spent years pretending not to choose sides, called me and cried. "He's not coping," she said. "He feels humiliated." Humiliated. Not sorry. Not reflective. Humiliated. I didn't celebrate his struggle. I felt nauseous. I felt like the floor was tilting because no matter how old you get, part of you still wants your parents to be okay. I also felt anger in flashes. Anger that he'd rather sink than accept help. Anger that he'd rather blame me than adapt. Anger that my mother was asking me to carry his emotions again. Then the court filings started. Liquidation. Sale of assets. Employee entitlements. It wasn't dramatic. It was paperwork. And in the middle of that paperwork was an opportunity that made my chest tighten. I could buy his stores through a structured acquisition, keep staff employed, pay suppliers, stabilize the locations, and integrate them into our network. It would be smart business. It would also be the final, undeniable reversal of his kitchen table prophecy. My legal team warned me. It would be messy emotionally. My CFO asked if I was sure. My therapist, yes, I have one, and I pay her happily, said, "You can do it for business reasons. Just be honest with yourself about the emotional cost." I told myself I was doing it for the staff, for the communities, for the efficiency of bringing those locations into our system. All of that was true, and also, somewhere deep in my ribs, There was a younger version of me whispering, let him see. Let him see you weren't what he said. Which brings us back to this boardroom. My father is still leaning over the table, still trying to intimidate me into changing reality by force of presence. You don't get to do this, he repeats, slower, like volume didn't work the first time, so he's trying wait. My lawyer, a calm man with a voice like polished stone, says, Sir, this meeting is for finalizing the acquisition documents. If you're here to object, you need to speak with your counsel. My father looks at him like he's a fly. I'm speaking to my child, he says, and there's ownership in the word that makes my stomach twist. I inhale slowly. I can feel the tape of my mic pack from this morning's interview still itching against my skin because I came here straight from filming a segment about small business resilience. The irony could choke me. You said I'd never succeed without your money, I say, and my voice sounds steadier than I feel. You said I wasn't built for it. My father's eyes flicker just once, and I know he remembers. Of course he does. He remembers everything he's ever said that landed. He just doesn't remember it as damage. He remembers it as authority. That was years ago, he says dismissive. You want to drag that up now? This isn't personal. This is my livelihood. I almost laugh, but it comes out as a tight breath. You made it personal, I say, for years. He straightens slightly, adjusting his stance like he's shifting from anger to negotiation. Look, he says, voice dropping, trying a different tactic. We can handle this privately. You don't need to do this publicly. People will talk. People will talk. The same fear my mother lived in. The same fear that kept her silent at the sink while he cut me down. My CFO glances at me, subtle question in her eyes. Are we proceeding? My father follows her gaze and sneers. So you've got your little team now, he says. Everyone claps for you. Everyone thinks you're brilliant. Then he looks at me again, and his voice sharpens. But you know what you are without me? Nothing. I made you tough. I made you ambitious. You're here because of me. That sentence lands like a slap. Not because I believe it, but because it's the core of his worldview. If I'm successful, it must still be his accomplishment. He cannot let me own myself. My hand stops shaking. Something in me clicks into place, not rage, not triumph, just clarity. No, I say quietly. I'm here to spite you. His face tightens. Excuse me. I look him in the eye and keep my voice flat. You didn't make me tough. You made me anxious. You didn't make me ambitious. You made me desperate to get away. You didn't fund me. You didn't mentor me. You mocked me when I failed and tried to take credit when I didn't. I swallow, feeling my throat burn, and add, and you don't get to rewrite that now because you need something. For a second, he looks genuinely stunned, like he didn't expect me to say it out loud in front of witnesses. His cheeks flush. His jaw works. He glances around the room, trying to find an ally, but all he finds are professionals who don't care about his family hierarchy. He leans forward again, quieter, dangerous. If you sign that, he says, you're not my child. The threat is supposed to collapse me. It would have once. I feel the echo of that old fear in my chest, being cut off, being rejected, being the problem. Then I remember, I've already lived without his approval. I built a life in the absence of his love. This isn't new. It's just louder. I nod once. Okay, I say. Then sign your side so your staff get paid. My father's eyes widen, rage flaring. You're doing this to punish me. I shake my head. I'm doing this because you refused every other option, I say. And because I'm not letting your employees drown because you can't admit you're wrong. My lawyer slides the pen toward me gently, like he's offering a bridge back to procedure. My father watches my hand like he thinks he can will it to stop. I sign. One page, then another. My signature is steady. The ink is dark and final. My CFO exhales softly, not relief exactly, more like release from held tension. The lawyer flips pages, points, guides. It's boring, bureaucratic, real. No dramatic music. Just paperwork and consequence. My father stares at the signed pages like they're a betrayal etched in ink. You think you've won, he says, voice low. You think you're better than me. I cap the pen and finally let myself sit back fully in my chair. My shoulders ache. My jaw hurts from clenching. I don't think I'm better than you. I say. I think of my father. And I think you were wrong about me. Both things can be true. He shakes his head, eyes bright with something he won't name. You couldn't have done it without. He trails off, as if he's searching for a new angle. Without the opportunities one gave you. You gave me fear, I say, and the honesty of it makes my throat tighten again. That's what you gave me. For a moment, the room is so quiet I can hear the hum of the air conditioning, the faint click of my lawyer's pen as he sets it down, the distant murmur of staff outside the door. My father looks older than he did when he walked in. Not physically, emotionally. Like he's suddenly aware of how much ground he lost without noticing. He opens his mouth, closes it, then says, "Your mother will be devastated." There it is. The last lever. The attempt to pull guilt like a rope. I think of my mother at the sink, pretending not to hear. I think of her phone calls asking me to manage his humiliation. I think of the way she loves peace more than truth. My chest aches with something complicated. Love, resentment, grief for the mother I needed and didn't have. I'm not doing this to hurt her, I say quietly. I'm doing this because I'm done being hurt. He scoffs, but it's weaker now. So what, he says. You wanted to prove me wrong? Congratulations. You got your little empire. Little. Even now, I stand because sitting feels like letting him loom. It's not little, I say, and my voice is calm. And I didn't build it just to prove you wrong. I built it because I like building. I built it because I'm good at it. I built it because I didn't want to spend my life waiting for you to decide I was worth something. He looks at me, and for a second, I see something flicker that might have been pride if he'd ever learned how to feel it without swallowing it into control. But it's gone quickly, replaced by bitterness. You'll regret this, he says, and he turns toward the door, shoulders stiff, like he needs the last word to leave with dignity. As he reaches for the handle, he pauses without turning around. You think money makes you powerful, he says. It doesn't. Family does. I almost answer with something sharp, something that would land, something that would feel good for 5 seconds. Instead, I say the truth that tastes like swallowing a stone. Family isn't supposed to be a weapon, I say. He leaves. The door shuts softly behind him, which somehow feels more brutal than if it slammed. I sit back down. My hand starts shaking again now that the fight is over. My CFO touches my elbow lightly. You okay? She asks, voice low. I nod, but it's not convincing. I will be, I say. After everyone files out and my lawyer starts talking about next steps, I stare at the signed papers and feel this strange hollowness. I thought I'd feel triumphant. I thought there would be fireworks inside my chest, a satisfying snap of closure. Instead, I feel tired. I feel like I just ran a marathon, carrying a weight I didn't realize I still had. Because here's the part people don't put in the neat success stories. Proving someone wrong doesn't heal the wound they made. It just shows you it was always possible for you to be whole without them. And that realization is both freeing and brutal. Later that night, my brother calls. He doesn't ask how I'm doing. He asks, "Did you really have to do it like that?" Like what? I ask, and I can hear the exhaustion in my own voice. Buying Dad's stores, he says, as if I robbed him at gunpoint. He's humiliated. I close my eyes. He was going to lose them anyway, I say. This way, staff keep their jobs. Suppliers get paid. Communities keep their stores. It's not a trophy. It's damage control. My brother sighs. You always have to make a point. There it is again. The accusation that my boundaries are performances. The idea that my actions are fueled by spite instead of sense. I made a point when I was 19, I say quietly, when I worked nights and studied and didn't ask for help because Dad said I'd fail without him. That was a point. This is a business decision. My brother is quiet for a moment, then says, softer, he's still your dad. I stare at the dark window, my reflection faint in the glass. And I'm still his child, I say. That didn't stop him from saying what he said. My mother calls the next morning. Her voice is watery. He's hurting, she says like that's the headline. I breathe in slowly. I'm not responsible for his feelings, I say. And even as I say it, a part of me feels guilty because I was trained to be responsible for everyone's feelings. I'm responsible for my actions. and my actions kept people employed. My mother whispers, "He didn't mean it." I almost laugh, but it comes out as a tired exhale. "He meant enough to say it," I reply. "More than once." She goes quiet. I can hear her swallowing on the other end of the line. "He's proud," she says finally, and it sounds like she's offering me a gift. I sit at my desk with my email open, already full of integration tasks and employee communications, and I feel something harden gently in my chest. He can be proud privately. I say, I'm not doing this for his pride. When I hang up, I stare at the wall for a minute, then open a draft email to all staff of the acquired stores. I write it carefully, plainly. We're keeping operations running. We're honoring entitlements. We're investing in upgrades. We're bringing you into the network. You're safe. I send it. My inbox floods with replies. Some are scared. Some are angry. Some are grateful. One is from a store manager who says, "Thank you. We thought we were done." That message hits me harder than any boardroom confrontation, because this is what I actually built. Not a monument to spite, but a system that holds people up when other systems drop them. A week later, I visit one of my father's former stores. It's weird walking in there. The smell is the same, cleaner, coffee cardboard. The fluorescent lights still make everything slightly too bright. The staff look at me cautiously, like they're trying to figure out if I'm the villain or the savior. I'm neither. I'm just a person who signed papers. The manager, a woman named Rena who has worked there for 8 years, takes me aside near the stockroom. "Your father used to come in and yell," she says bluntly. "Not at customers. At us. Over little things. People quit because of it." My stomach twists. "I'm sorry," I say, and I mean it. Rena studies my face. "Are you like him?" she asks. The question is simple, and it terrifies me in a way I don't show. I think of my father leaning over the boardroom table. I think of that kitchen table night. I think of the way power can rot you if you don't watch it. "No," I say quietly. "And if I ever become like him, I want you to tell me." Rena nods once, like she's filing that away to test later. On my way out, I stand for a moment in the aisle by the window where my father used to stand when he wanted to look like a man in control. I can almost see him there, arms crossed, scanning shelves, judging. I feel a pang that's sharp enough to surprise me. Not because I miss his approval, because I miss the version of him I kept hoping existed, the father who could have been proud without needing to own me. I walk back to my car and sit behind the wheel with my hands resting on the steering wheel, breathing. The city sounds are normal: traffic, distant construction, someone laughing on the footpath. My phone buzzes with a calendar notification. Integration meeting, 10 minutes. Life keeps moving. It always does. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear his voice, "You'll never succeed without my money." And I think about how wrong he was, not just about money, but about what success even is. Success isn't having someone's permission. It isn't being let in. It isn't being declared worthy by a man who measures love and control. Success, for me, was sitting in a cramped bedroom, stapling essays, and realizing I could create something. Success was paying my employees, even when a client didn't pay me, because I refused to become the kind of person who passes pain down the chain. Success was learning to say no without apologizing. Success was building something big enough that even my father couldn't deny it existed, even if he still tried to make it small with his words. And yes, part of me wanted him to see it. Part of me wanted to put the proof in his face and watch his certainty crumble. I won't pretend that part isn't there. I'm human. I was hurt. I wanted the wound acknowledged. But the truth I'm still learning is this: I didn't build an empire to prove him wrong. I built it because I refused to live inside his opinion of me. He walked into that boardroom expecting me to flinch. He expected the old hierarchy to snap back into place like muscle memory. And for a second, my body wanted to obey, because that's what bodies do when they've been trained. But I signed anyway. Not out of revenge, not out of cruelty, out of choice. And that's the thing he never understood. The moment I stopped needing his money, I also stopped needing his permission.